The evening air was biting. The kind of chill that settles deep in your bones and refuses to leave. But the cold I felt had nothing to do with the weather. I stood on the sidewalk outside the Grand Hotel ballroom, the wind whipping the hem of my Sunday best, a navy blue dress I had bought 3 months ago, hoping, praying, that an invitation would arrive in the mail. It never did. But I was here anyway. Through the towering glass doors, the golden glow of chandeliers spilled out onto the concrete, like spilled honey. Inside I could see them. The silhouettes of people laughing, the clinking of crystal flutes, the swirl of expensive fabrics. It was a world of celebration, a world of joy. And right there, in the center of it all, was my daughter, Emily. She looked like a vision. The white lace of her gown cascaded around her like a waterfall, catching the light with every movement. She threw her head back, laughing at something her new father-in-law said, her hand resting easily on the arm of a man I barely knew. She looked radiant. She looked happy. And she seemed completely unbothered by the fact that the woman who had birthed her, raised her, and sacrificed everything for her was standing on the other side of the glass, shivering in the dark. I clutched the small, velvet-wrapped box in my hand so tightly that the corners dug into my palm. It wasn't a flashy gift. It was her grandmother's pearl brooch, the one Emily used to play with as a toddler, pinning it to her t-shirt and pretending to be a queen. I had polished it for hours, imagining the moment I would pin it to her dress, the moment we would cry happy tears together. Now that dream felt like a hallucination. I took a breath, steeling myself, and stepped toward the entrance. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I just wanted to see her. I just wanted to give her this. "Excuse me, ma'am," a voice rumbled. A security guard, a mountain of a man in a black suit, stepped into my path. He didn't look malicious, just indifferent. He held a clipboard in his hand. "Private event," he said flatly. "Name?" "Grace," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Grace Brooks. I'm the mother of the bride." I waited for the recognition. I waited for him to step aside, apologetic. Instead, he ran his finger down the list once, then twice. He frowned. "I'm sorry, Ms. Brooks," he said, looking up with a pity that hurt worse than scorn. "Your name isn't on the list." "Check again," I whispered, the blood draining from my face. "There must be a mistake. She's my daughter." "There's no mistake, ma'am." The instructions were precise. "The guest list is strict. No exceptions." I looked past his shoulder. Emily was less than 50 feet away. She was adjusting her veil, smiling as a photographer snapped a picture. She didn't look for me. She didn't scan the crowd, wondering where I was. She was whole without me. The humiliation hit me like a physical slap, sharp, burning, and disorienting. Passers-by on the street glanced at me. The older woman being turned away from a luxury hotel, clutching a small gift box like a beggar. I felt naked in my rejection. But as I stood there, watching the security guard cross his arms, the tears that threatened to fall suddenly evaporated. The heat of shame in my chest began to cool, hardening into something else, something distinct, something heavy. I looked at my daughter one last time through the glass. I didn't turn around and run to my car to cry. I didn't plead with the guard, I simply nodded. "I see," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Enjoy the evening." I turned on my heel, the sound of my sensible heels clicking rhythmically on the pavement. I wasn't leaving to hide. I was going to prepare. Because there was one thing my daughter and her new husband had forgotten. You cannot erase a mother who knows her own worth. And I decided right then and there. I would not walk away quietly. Not this time. To understand the depth of that cut, you have to understand the bond we once shared. Emily wasn't just a daughter to me. She was my sunrise after a very long night. I had her late in life, at 42, when everyone, including the doctors, told me my time for motherhood had passed. When they placed her in my arms, pink and squalling, I made a covenant with God. I promised that as long as I had breath in my body, this child would never want for love. Her father passed when she was 3. A heart attack that took him before he could teach her to ride a bike. It was just us. Us against the world. I worked double shifts at the textile factory. My fingers constantly pricked and calloused. My back aching so badly some nights I had to crawl into bed. But I never let Emily see the struggle. To her, our small 2-bedroom apartment was a palace. I sewed all her clothes, copying the styles from the expensive magazines she loved. I stayed up until 300 a.m. helping her with science fair projects, gluing cardboard, and painting styrofoam planets while she slept, so that she could wake up and feel proud. I remembered the nights when thunder would shake the house, and she'd crawl into my bed, her cold little feet tucking under my legs. "Mama," she'd whisper. "I'm here, baby. I'm always here. Promise?" "I promise." Until the stars fall. We were best friends. As she grew into a teenager, when other girls were slamming doors and locking their mothers out, Emily was sitting at the kitchen table with me, drinking hot cocoa, and telling me about her crush on the boy in history class. We shared an unspoken language, a rhythm of life that felt unbreakable. She used to talk constantly about her wedding day. It was our favorite game. She'd drape a white sheet over her head and march down the hallway. "And you'll be right there, Mama," she'd say, her eyes wide and serious. "You have to give me away, because you're the only one who really owns my heart." I wouldn't miss it for the world. I'd tell her, kissing her forehead. I poured everything into her. I drained my savings to send her to an out-of-state university to study art history. I drove a car that was falling apart so she could have a reliable vehicle for campus. I wore the same coat for 10 years so she could have a spring break trip with her friends. I didn't mind. That's what mothers do. We cannibalize our own comfort to feed our children's dreams. And for a long time, she was grateful. She called every day. She sent cards. She ended every conversation with, "I love you, Mom. You're my rock." But rocks are meant to be stepped on. I just didn't realize that's what I had become until it was too late. The drift didn't happen overnight. It happened in inches. A missed call here. A shorter visit there. A tone of voice that shifted from affectionate to impatient. I blamed it on her job. I blamed it on the stress of adulthood. I made excuses for her because the alternative, that she was outgrowing me, was too painful to look at directly. But looking back now, I realize the foundation began to crack the moment she met him. The moment Ryan walked into our lives, the air in the room changed. And I should have known then that a storm was coming. I remember the first time Emily brought Ryan home for dinner. She had been dating him for 4 months, gushing about his job in finance, his sleek apartment in the city, and his family's summer home in the Hamptons. She was breathless when she spoke of him, as if he were a prize she couldn't believe she had won. When he walked through my front door, the first thing I noticed was his eyes. They were cold, calculating. He scanned my living room, the worn beige sofa, the family photos in mismatched frames, the crocheted throw blanket on the armchair, with a look that hovered somewhere between amusement and disgust. "So this is where it all began," he said, offering me a hand that felt too smooth, like polished marble. "It's not much, but it's home," I said warmly, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. "Welcome, Ryan. I've made a pot roast." Dinner was an exercise in subtle humiliation. Ryan didn't insult me directly, he was too clever for that. Instead, he asked questions that were really judgments wrapped in curiosity. "So, Grace," he said, "not Mrs. Brooks, just Grace. Emily tells me you worked in a factory. That must have been exhausting work." "Very manual?" "It was honest work," I said, pouring him water. "It put food on this table and a degree in Emily's hand." Of course," he chuckled, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "It's just fascinating. Emily fits so well into my world. It's hard to imagine her growing up in this context. I looked at Emily, waiting for her to correct him, to defend our lives. Instead, she looked down at her plate, a blush creeping up her neck. Ryan's family is very different, Mom, she murmured. They're very established. I repeated, tasting the word. Over the next few months, the improvements began. Ryan started buying Emily new clothes, neutral tones, sharp lines, expensive brands. He suggested she change her hair, smoothing out her natural curls into a sleek, rigid bob. And then, he started on me. Mrs. Brooks, he'd say during their brief, infrequent visits. You know, if you wore simpler jewelry, it would look a bit more sophisticated. Less cluttered. Or, really should get someone to look at your diction, Grace. You have a very distinct accent. It might be hard for my parents to understand you. The worst part wasn't his arrogance. It was watching Emily slowly morph into his echo. She started correcting my grammar. She rolled her eyes when I told stories about the neighborhood. She stopped inviting me to her friends' gatherings. Ryan thinks it would be boring for you, Mom, she'd say, checking her phone. We're just going to a wine tasting. It's not really your scene. My scene, I asked once. Since when is spending time with my daughter not my scene? You know what I mean, she snapped, a flash of irritation in her eyes. Don't be dramatic. We're trying to build a future, and sometimes you just hold on too tight to the past. I realized then that Ryan wasn't just insecure. He was territorial. He viewed Emily as a project. A doll he was remodeling, and I was the before picture he wanted to burn. The erasure of a mother is a quiet violence. It doesn't happen with a bang. It occurs in the silence of a phone that doesn't ring. The first significant blow was Thanksgiving. For 26 years, Thanksgiving was our holiday. I would spend 3 days cooking, cornbread dressing, candied yams, and the turkey basted with my secret herb butter. The house would smell like sage and onion, the warmth radiating from the kitchen like a heartbeat. 2 weeks before the holiday, I called Emily to ask what time they would be arriving. Oh, she said, her voice tight. Mom, I thought I told you. We're going to Ryan's parents' house this year. They have a lodge in Aspen. Aspen. I sat down on the kitchen stool, clutching the receiver. But I already bought the turkey, Emily. Mom, please don't guilt trip me, she sighed. It's important for Ryan's career that we network with his family's friends. We can do something another time. Another time, I whispered. We'll stop by for an hour the week after, she promised. They didn't. They sent a fruit basket with a typed note thinking of you. Both of them signed it, but I knew Emily hadn't written it. It felt cold, impersonal, like a corporate gift sent to a client. Then came the subtle erasing of my history. I went to visit them at their new condo. A glass and steel box that felt like a dentist's waiting room. I looked around for any sign of us. There were no photos of her childhood. No pictures of her graduation, where I stood beaming next to her. The only images displayed were of her and Ryan, or Ryan's family on boats and golf courses. Where is the picture of us from your 21st birthday? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. It didn't fit the aesthetic, Mom, Emily said, adjusting a minimalistic vase. Ryan likes things clean. Visual clutter stresses him out. I was in visual clutter. My love, my memories, my existence. It was all just a mess that needed to be swept away. When I tried to talk to her about it, she shut me down. You wouldn't understand, became her mantra. It's complicated, Mom. Just trust me. I trust you, I told her. But I don't feel like I know you anymore. She didn't answer. She just looked at her watch and said they had a reservation to get to. I was ushered out the door like a repairman who had overstayed his welcome. I found out on Facebook that my daughter was getting married. I was scrolling through my feed on a Tuesday evening, a cup of tea in my hand, when the picture popped up. It was a professional shot. Ryan on one knee in a vineyard, Emily covering her mouth in feigned surprise. A diamond the size of a grape sparkling on her finger. The caption read, "Said yes to me forever. Fen future Miss Vanderwall." The post had been up for 6 hours. There were hundreds of comments. "Congratulations! So happy for you! Stunning!" I sat there in the blue light of the screen, the tea going cold in my hand. My daughter was engaged, and I was learning about it at the same time as her high school acquaintances and distant coworkers. I waited for a call. I waited all night. I waited 3 days. Finally, I called her. "Mom, I've been so busy," she chirped, her voice frantic and high-pitched. "I was going to call you." "You're engaged," I said softly. "Yes. Isn't it amazing? Ryan designed the ring himself. It's beautiful, Emily. I wish I had known before the internet did." "Oh, Mom, don't be like that. It happened so fast." "We're just enjoying the bubble." The bubble evidently didn't include me. Weeks turned into months. I knew wedding planning was happening. I could feel the energy of it, the gravitational pull of a significant event. But I was in orbit, looking in from outer space. I wasn't invited to go dress shopping. I saw the photos later on Instagram. Emily standing on a pedestal in a boutique, surrounded by Ryan's mother, his sisters, and 3 of her friends. They were drinking champagne. Ryan's mother, a woman named Sharon who wore pearls the size of golf balls, was dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. That should have been me. That was my place. I was the one who bandaged her scraped knees. I was the one who bought her prom dress from a thrift store and altered it until it looked designer. I was the one who prayed over her while she slept. Why was Sharon crying? She barely knew my daughter. Then came the bridal shower. I learned about it when a neighbor, Mrs. Gable, stopped me at the mailbox. "Oh, Grace, you must be so proud," she beamed. "I saw the video of the shower on your niece's page. The theme looked so elegant. Parisian chic, wasn't it?" My stomach dropped to my shoes. "Yes," I lied, forcing a smile that felt like cracking plaster. "Very elegant." I went inside and searched for the video. There it was. A garden party, tables laden with macarons and flowers. Emily is opening gifts, silk robes, crystal vases. And there, sitting in the front row, in the mother of the bride chair, was Sharon. I watched the video on loop until my eyes burned. Each replay felt like a needle stitching a message into my heart. You are not part of this family. You are the past. You are erased. I couldn't take the silence anymore. I texted Emily and asked to meet. Just coffee. 10 minutes. She agreed reluctantly, squeezing me in on a Tuesday afternoon between a spin class and a cake tasting. We met at a trendy cafe downtown. The music was loud, and the coffee cost $7. Emily looked polished, her hair perfect, her nails done in a soft nude color. She checked her phone twice before taking a sip. "So?" she said. "What's up, Mom? Is everything okay with the house?" "The house is fine, Emily," I said, clasping my hands on the table to stop them from shaking. "I want to talk about the wedding." She stiffened. Her eyes darted away. "What about it? I haven't received an invitation. I haven't been told a date. I haven't been asked to help with anything." "Emily, I'm your mother." She let out a long, dramatic sigh. "Mom, look. It's complicated. Ryan and I want a definite vibe. It's a black tie affair. Very high-end. Small guest list. And there's no room for me on a small guest list." "It's not that," she said, finally looking at me. Her expression pained but firm. "It's just that Ryan's family is handling everything. They're paying for it, Mom. All of it. And they have expectations." At that moment, Ryan walked in. He hadn't been invited, but he slid into the booth next to Emily as if he owned the place. "Hello, Grace," he said, his smile tight. "Emily said you were upset." "I'm not upset, Ryan, I'm hurt. I'm excluded." "Listen," Ryan said, leaning forward, his voice lowering into a patronizing tone he might use with a slow child. "We do want you there." "Of course we do." Hope flared in my chest. Foolish and fragile. "But," he continued, We have a limited number of seats for the ceremony and dinner. Those are strictly for the bridal party and immediate family of the hosts. My parents. I am immediate family, I said, my voice rising. Ryan said, waving a hand. But practically, you're not hosting. However, we have a solution. We need someone responsible for managing the coat check, and perhaps keeping an eye on the flower girls. And ring bearer during the reception. They can be a handful, and we want the real guests to enjoy the evening without distractions. The world stopped spinning. The noise of the cafe fell away. You want me to work at my daughter's wedding? I whispered. It's an important role, Emily chimed in, her voice shrill with desperation. You're so good with kids, Mom, and you'd be there. You'd be in the building. As staff, I said. You want me to be staff? Don't look at it like that, Ryan scoffed. It's a contribution. Since you couldn't contribute financially, we thought this would be a way for you to feel useful. I looked at my daughter. My beautiful, brilliant daughter. I waited for her to slap him. I waited for her to say, "How dare you speak to my mother like that?" She didn't. She looked down at her lat, stirring the foam with a straw. She was ashamed of me. She was letting him turn me into a servant because she was too afraid of losing the lifestyle he offered. I see, I said. My legs felt like lead. So, can we count on you? Ryan asked, checking his watch. I'll think about it, I said. I walked out of that cafe, and I didn't look back. But inside, something had fractured. The grief was gone. In its place was a cold, hard clarity. I did it. I might have swallowed my pride, worn a black uniform, and watched the children, just to catch a glimpse of her walking down the aisle. A mother's love is a pathetic, desperate thing sometimes. But 3 days later, God decided I needed to see the whole truth. My phone buzzed with a message. It was a photo. It came from a number I didn't recognize. But the profile picture was one of Ryan's cousins, a young girl named Chloe, whom I had met briefly once. She must have had my number stored from when I helped her fix a hem on her skirt during that one awkward dinner visit. The message said, Look at the seating chart, savage lol. It was clearly meant for someone else. But there it was on my screen. A photo of a large whiteboard with the wedding seating plan. I zoomed in. I saw the head table. Groom's family. Table. Front and center. And then I looked at the bride's side. My name wasn't there. But off to the side, written in red marker in the margin, was a note next to the name, Grace Brooks. The note read, "Do not seat. Keep her in the back coat room. She ruins the aesthetic. Too ghetto for the photos." Below that, a text bubble from a group chat titled, Wedding Squad, was visible in the screenshot. It was a message from Ryan. Don't worry. Emily is on board. She's embarrassed by her mom anyway. We'll keep her out of sight. The old lady is lucky we're letting her in the building. And underneath that, a reply from Emily. I just want the day to be perfect. No drama. If she stays in the back, it's fine. My phone slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the kitchen floor. She ruins the aesthetic. Too ghetto. Emily is embarrassed by her mom. It wasn't just exclusion. It was disdainful. They were laughing at me. They were discussing me as if I were a stain on a white tablecloth that needed to be hidden. I fell to my knees in the middle of my kitchen, gasping for air. The pain was physical, a ripping sensation in my chest. My daughter. The girl I had carried. The girl I had starved for so she could eat. She wasn't just following Ryan's lead. She was complicit. She had sold my dignity for a seat at their table. That night, I howled. I cried the kind of tears that burn your skin. I mourned the death of my daughter, because the Emily I knew, the Emily who loved me, was dead. This stranger in her body was someone I didn't recognize. I sat in the dark, rocking back and forth, holding the teddy bear she had slept with as a child. I felt small. I felt worthless. I felt exactly how they wanted me to feel, like trash. But as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gray. The tears stopped. I walked to the bathroom mirror. My eyes were swollen. My face looked tired. But beneath the exhaustion, I saw my own mother's eyes staring back at me. I saw the eyes of a woman who had survived poverty, loss, and widowhood. Grace. I whispered to myself. Get up. They expected me to be weak. They expected me to either stay away in shame or show up and obediently hang coats in the back room like a servant. They wanted me invisible. So, I decided to be the most visible person in the room. I wasn't going to cause a scene by screaming. I wasn't going to throw a cake or fight security. That's what they expected. That would prove them right, that I was ghetto, that I was drama. No. I was going to destroy their narrative with the one thing they couldn't buy, couldn't fake, and couldn't hide. Truth. I didn't call Emily. I didn't text Ryan. I went silent. Instead, I called an old friend. Marianne Cole was a woman I had cared for 20 years ago, when she was recovering from a stroke. We had stayed in touch, exchanging Christmas cards. Marianne was now a retired senior circuit court judge, a woman of immense power and iron-clad integrity. Grace, she said, her voice warm when I called. It's been too long. Marianne, I need a favor. And I need legal advice. We met for tea. I showed her the screenshots. I showed her the texts. Marianne, a woman who had seen the worst of humanity in her courtroom, looked at the phone with a hardened jaw. This is despicable, she said quietly. But Grace, what do you want to do? No, I said. I want to attend the wedding, and I want to remind my daughter of who she is. But I need leverage. Because they won't let me in. Marianne nodded. You know, Grace, I recall helping you with the paperwork for your husband's life insurance trust fund years ago. The one for Emily. Yes? I said. It was small. I never touched it. It was meant to be a nest egg for her marriage. Did you ever sign the transfer papers? Marianne asked, raising an eyebrow. I paused. No. The terms were, she received the trust upon her marriage, provided the trustees, me, sign off on the union as being in her best interest. Marianne smiled a sharp, dangerous smile. And seeing as this union involves emotional abuse and alienation of affection, I think the trustee has some concerns. We spent the next week preparing. I bought a dress. Not a mother of the bride dress. A power suit. Royal blue silk. Ella commanding. I printed the screenshots. I organized the documents. I wasn't going to ruin her wedding. I was going to save her from her own arrogance. Which brings us back to the moment outside the hotel. After the guard turned me away, I walked around the corner where a black sedan was waiting. The window rolled down. Judge Marianne Cole sat in the back, wearing a stunning black gown and holding her cane like a scepter. Ready? She'd asked. Ready, I said. I climbed in. We drove to the VIP entrance, the one meant for dignitaries and high-profile guests. The valet opened the door. When we approached the secondary security checkpoint, the guard stepped forward. Invitation. Marianne simply held up her badge. Gold and heavy. Judge Marianne Cole. And this is my guest, Mrs. Grace Brooks. We are here on official business regarding the bride's trust estate. Unless you want to explain to the district attorney why you obstructed a legal proceeding, I suggest you open the door. The guard paled. He stepped aside immediately. Right this way, Your Honor. We walked into the ballroom just as the speeches were beginning. The room was breathtaking. Candles everywhere, white roses hanging from the ceiling. It smelled of money and lilies. Ryan was standing at the microphone, holding a champagne flute. To my beautiful wife, he was saying, his voice smooth as oil. Who comes from humble beginnings, but has blossomed into the woman she was always meant to be. I stepped into the light. Marianne was right beside me. The sound of my heels on the marble floor echoed. Heads turned. A ripple of confusion went through the room. Ryan froze. He squinted against the spotlight. When he realized who it was, his face drained of color. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Emily was sitting at the head table. She dropped her fork. Her mouth fell open. "Mom," she mouthed. Ryan's mother, Sharon, stood up, knocking over her wine glass. "Security," she hissed. "Get her out." 2 guards started toward me. Marianne stepped forward, banging her cane once on the floor. The sound cracked like a gunshot. "Sit down," Marianne commanded. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of 1,000 sentences. "Mrs. Brooks has the floor." The room went deathly silent. I walked toward the head table. I didn't look at the guests. I looked only at my daughter. She looked terrified. Not because I was scared, but because she knew what she had done. I stopped 10 feet from the table. Ryan made a move to grab the microphone, but I didn't need it. My voice, strengthened by years of shouting over factory machinery, rang out clearly and accurately. "Emily," I said. "Mom, please," she whispered, tears springing to her eyes. "Don't do this, not here." "I am not here to fight," I said calmly. "I am here to give you your gift." I placed the small velvet box on the table. "Grandma's brooch," I said. "You always wanted to wear it today." Emily stared at the box, trembling. And I continued, turning to face the room. "I am here to clear up a misunderstanding. You see, I was told I ruined the aesthetic. I was told I was too ghetto for this room." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Ryan looked like he was about to vomit. "I was told," I said, my voice shaking slightly now with emotion, "that my daughter was embarrassed by me." "Mum, stop," Emily sobbed. "Why?" I asked. "Are you embarrassed now? Or were you embarrassed when I scrubbed floors so you could take Bollet? Were you embarrassed when I held you while you cried over your first heartbreak? Were you embarrassed when I spent my life making sure you felt loved?" I signaled to Marianne. She had connected her tablet to the smart podium's wireless display system, a trick we had worked out with the venue's confused AV technician earlier, who was all too happy to help a judge. The screen behind the couple, the one meant for a montage of their love story, flickered. The seating chart screenshot appeared. The note: "Do not seat. Keep her in the back, too ghetto." The text from Ryan: "The old lady is lucky we're letting her in." Emily's text: "If she stays in the back, it's fine." The silence in the room was suffocating. It was heavy, thick, and absolute. I saw Ryan's parents turn purple. I saw guests covering their mouths. I saw the horror on Emily's friends' faces. "You wanted an aesthetic," I told the room, looking at Ryan. "You wanted a picture, perfect life. But you forgot that a house built on rot will collapse." Ryan snapped. The facade broke. "Turn it off!" he screamed, his face twisting into an ugly snarl. He shoved the AV technician. "You crazy old hag! I told you she was trash! I told you she would ruin everything." The room gasped. The charm was gone. The polished finance guy was gone. In his place was a vicious, angry little man. Emily stood up slowly. She looked at Ryan, hearing the words he had just screamed. "Trash." Hag. She looked at the screen. Then she looked at me. "You." Emily's voice shook. She looked at Ryan. "You told me she didn't want to come. You told me she said she felt uncomfortable around my friends." "She is uncomfortable!" Ryan yelled. "Look at her! She doesn't belong here." "No," Emily said, the realization washing over her face like cold water. "You lied to me." "And I..." She looked at the text message on the screen. Her own words. "I let you." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "Mom," she choked out. I didn't know he called you that. I just thought you wanted to fit in," I said softly. "And the price of admission was your mother." Emily crumpled. She sank into her chair, burying her face in her hands. I looked at Ryan, who was now being restrained by his own father, to stop him from shouting. "The trust fund," I announced, my voice cutting through the chaos, "is held by me. And as trustee, I am invoking the morality clause. There will be no transfer of funds." Ryan's head whipped around. "What? You can't do that!" "We counted on that money for the down payment. Earn it, I said, cold as ice. I turned back to Emily. I walked up to her and placed my hand on her shaking shoulder. I love you, Emily, I whispered. I will always love you. But I respect myself too much to stay where I am despised. Mom, please, I'm sorry, she wept, grabbing my hand. Please don't go. I gently pulled my hand away. I forgive you, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean access. You have a lot of growing up to do. Baby girl. And you have to do it without me for a while. I nodded to Marianne. We turned and walked out of the ballroom. The aisle felt miles long. I could feel every eye on me. Not with judgment this time, but with awe. I walked out of the hotel and into the night air. It was still cold, but I didn't feel it. I felt clean. I had lost a daughter that night, perhaps. But I had found myself again. Sometimes, we give so much of ourselves to the people we love that we forget to save a little peace for ourselves. Love means enduring disrespect. Motherhood means being a doormat. But hear me when I say this: a child does not own their parents' dignity. If you are ever made to feel small, if you are ever told you are too much or not enough, remember who you are. Remember the storms you survived. Respect is not a gift you beg for. It is a tax you collect, and if they cannot pay it, you close the account. Walk tall, queens, even if you have to walk alone.